What's up, YouTube? Today we're going to be looking at the Open Great League, and the team that we're going to be taking a look at today includes Metang. Now, Metang jumped to one of the top-ranked Pokemon this current season because he got access to the buffed Fury Cutter, and no one has really talked about it since, and I kind of wanted to take a real look at this thing. Today I've got it on a team with Gastrodon and then Mandibuzz in the back, and we're going to be acting as a safe swap with Metang. Now, why did I want to put Metang on the safe swap? And that's what we have right here with these graphics. The top two show Metang. The top left is Metang in the one shield scenario at 0 energy. It's not great. It's pretty negative, and its average is kind of on the lower end, which is not what you want to see from a top-ranked Pokemon. However, its distribution is really thin on the graph, and what that tells me is even in its bad matchups, it's not losing that hard. And in its good matchups, it's also not winning that hard, which is kind of a feature of most really good safe swaps, which we'll talk about Shadow Drapion in the bottom there to comparison. But when you give this thing an energy lead, suddenly its wins go positive and its average goes positive as well, while maintaining that distribution. So has close matchups, but it has close positive matchups on the safe swap. And that's very similar to Drapion. You see Drapion in the or the one shield scenario with no energy is really negative, 14 and 32 against the meta, which is absolutely insane because everyone knows Shadow Drapion is really good, and that's because with a 2 Poison Sting advantage, look at that, Shadow Drapion jumps to a 27 and 20 record with a 546 average. So very similar to Metang, maybe slightly better to be honest, but yeah, that's why I wanted to take a look at Metang today, and that's exactly what we're going to do. So special thank you to the Legend Trainer members on this channel, Big Burden, Andrew Pitton, and Moosechu, and without further ado, let's hop into these battles. Alright, Gastrodon into Talonflame, so facing a Core Breaker on the lead in the very first matchup. That is pretty unfortunate, but we can just stay in this matchup because at least the Incinerates are resisted, and I know I can take one fly pretty comfortably, but my opponent full sends a Brave Bird. They end up trying to make a catch onto their Ferrothorn. I hold on to that energy, and now in comes Mandibuzz. Mandibuzz, of course, will be met with a super effective Thunder here, but 2 Thunders look like they're not quite enough to pick up the knockout. So I feel comfortable no shielding 2 of those because Bullet Seed has no ability to really farm me down. It just doesn't do that much damage in this matchup. It's resisted, and it comes pretty slow, so I will just let the second Thunder go. It puts me deep into the red, but it's not enough to pick up the knockout, and now I can throw this second Dark Pulse. I can pivot into my Metang, and Metang is going to get the full Fury Cutter farm down, leaving with loads of energy. In comes the third Pokemon, and it's Amoonguss in the back. Amoonguss now will be met with a super effective Psyshock. Are they going to shield this, or are they going to let this go? They're going to let that go and then run 2 shield Talonflame, which could be really tough because I've only got Metang and Gastrodon left. I have to commit the shield onto the foul play if I want to get this energy off on the Talonflame. And now here comes the Psyshock. My opponent will shield that up. Here comes a second Psyshock already. The pacing on Metang absolutely coming in clutch in this matchup. And now what I'm going to do here is I'm going to overfarm. I'm going to defer that last Incinerate onto my Mandibuzz. It gets KO'd, but now I can come in with my Gastrodon. I have 2 Body Slams loaded, and as long as I'm not at 1 HP, I will be able to get both of these off. So here's 1 Body Slam. If my opponent shields, I can throw the second, because they are not at the back-to-back moves. They actually let it go. In comes the Amoonguss, but Amoonguss now will be met with a Body Slam. They will have to respect this damage, and as soon as I grab that final shield, I know I can survive 1 Astonish. So here comes a super effective Psyshock. Ended up deferring that Incinerate damage, wins us that game because we get to the Psyshock and we are able to take the win. Into the next match, a good lead at least in this game. Steelix, they're going to safe switch into a Primeape, and I have a pretty decent response in Mandibuzz. Of course, Mandibuzz probably will be met with either a super effective Ice Punch or a neutral close combat. Either one will do about 50% here. It is the close combat. My opponent is already at a second close combat, so I'm going to have to respect this with a shield, and it is the second close combat. But now, if my opponent wants to switch, they're going to have to double shield because I will outpace 2 back-to-back aerial aces before my opponent can get to another close combat. And that's exactly what's going to happen. Here comes a second aerial ace. Will they shield this? They will. So now I'm in a difficult situation because they're going to get to 2 close combats before I can get to my next aerial ace. So I will just let this go. At this point, their defense is super lowered. I can just come in with my Gastrodon and get the full farm down. Unfortunately, I do get one turn lag, which means I will have to take one extra cross chop, one boosted cross chop at that, but it doesn't do that much damage. And now what's in the back? It's a Machoke. So yes, my opponent did flip switch, but at the cost of 2 shields, and Shadow Machoke with no shields is not where you want to be for my opponent. So I will just shield this up after connecting with the Earth Power. The Mudslap will go through, it'll pick up the knockout, back in comes the Steelix. Steelix will be met with a super effective Earth Power, and they will have to throw energy in order to pick up the knockout here before I get the full Mudslap farm down. That's exactly what they're going to do. Psychic Fangs probably will be enough to pick up the knockout here, and it is, but in comes Metang, and Metang not going to be one-shot by any one move that my opponent might already have. Even if they were running Earthquake, I don't think it would one-shot. And they're not going to get there before we get to a Psyshock, so we are able to take that win. Into next match, another Talonflame. Jeez, you run the core of Gastrodon plus Metang and you see Talonflame. That is pretty rough, but at least it's not a Sucker Punch Galarian Moltres. That would arguably be worse. You will notice in this matchup, I go for the harder hitting Stab Earth Power as opposed to the neutral Body Slam, and that's exactly for that reason I just mentioned. It's Stab, it hits a lot harder, and so I know even with the defense fall chance that Earth Power is probably just the better, harder hitting move to go for. That said, it looks like I would be able to survive another Incinerate, so my opponent is forced to throw this energy, and I was able to grab a shield in this matchup. Maybe my opponent respecting a Water Pulse there, wondering maybe that's why I was staying in the matchup, but it wasn't. I'm just core broken. But at this point, I can just let a move go on my Mana Buzz, and unfortunately for me, I think they're going to make it to another charge move unless I throw my energy. So that's exactly what I'm going to do. I'm going to pick up the knockout with an Aerial Ace here, and now what is in the... Oh, never mind. My opponent is actually going to shield that, which is kind of surprising. Here comes a shield from my Mana Buzz, and now I'm going to just go for the full Snarl farm down. What is in the back that didn't want to see Mana Buzz up energy? A Drapion. I guess that's not really a terrible matchup for them, so I'm not really sure why they committed that shield, unless their other Pokemon is also weak to Mana Buzz in the back. I wouldn't consider Drapion weak to Mana Buzz, but I wouldn't consider it a good match for Drapion. So here comes 2 back-to-back Aerial Aces. I'm gonna wait the turn, go for the catch onto my Metang. Did we get the Aqua Tail catch? We did. That is absolutely massive because now I don't have to commit the shield until this one, which I know will absolutely be a crunch, and that's exactly what I'm gonna do. If it is the grass in the back, then we're gonna be in a fantastic position, and it's superior in the back, and that just makes sense, right, from a team building standpoint. You've got Talonflame on the lead, weak to rock and water, so having a grass in the back just makes sense. Also weak to electric, which grass resists. So that core, very, very strong. But look at how comfortably we survive the Frenzy Plant there. I'm able to overfarm like crazy, go for a Psyshock to pick up the knockout on the Serperior, and those Fury Cutters put it in Psyshock range. And now here comes a resisted Psyshock, but it's on a Shadow Drapion, so it will still be able to pick up the knockout, and we are able to take that win. Into next match, Gastrodon into Dragalge. So this is actually a good lead for us because Mudslap is super effective. They're going to save switch into a Gastrodon, and this is just RPS for my opponent. Unfortunately, we were given a good lead and a good save switch, so we are going to capitalize on this. We switched as fast as possible, so they didn't gain any advantage from safe switching their Gastrodon. I wouldn't recommend safe switching a Gastrodon in this meta. It's just too risky. There are flyers out there. You've got Galarian Moltres, Mana Buzz, Jumpluff. There's quite a few flyers that you just do not, I mean, even Talonflame, that's not a fantastic matchup for the Gastrodon. But I'm able to connect with 2 Dark Pulses. My opponent ends up giving up switch again, and it's Greninja in the back. And now this is actually a little bit awkward, because I need to chip it with an Aerial Ace before I can pivot into my Metang, because Metang has super effective Fury Cutters, but it takes super effective damage from the Night Slashes. So I know I can survive a Hydro from that range, but it is just barely, and now here comes an Aerial Ace. No way they're going to shield 2, and they do let the second one go, which is fantastic, because in comes Metang. Metang, of course, good into the Dragalge as well, but I can survive 1 Night Slash. They end up sniping with a Gastrodon, but they didn't have energy, so I end up getting the full Fury Cutter farm down. Are they going to come back with the Dragalge, or is it going to be the Greninja? Neither. My opponent is just going to resign the match, and we are able to take that win. Into the next match, Lapras on the lead. This is a pretty like neutral lead for the Gastrodon, so I will just stay in this matchup. They're going to throw the Sparkling Aria right before I get to the Earth Power. That's fine. I can live 1 Sparkling Aria, so we will let this go. It does about 40%, but the sideways have added up, so it puts me into the yellow health range. I go for the earth power. They end up shielding that, so now I'm going to pivot into my Metang. Metang now will be met with a Sparkling Aria, but look at how little this does. Doesn't even take me to 50% health. They end up coming in with Primeape, and now Primeape is going to be met with a super effective Psyshock, a buffed Psyshock at that since the current season. They actually let that go, but they do live it. But I will decide to dictate switch here because I'm just going to match shields with my opponent. Are they going to come back in with a Lapras, or are they going to come in with the third? They are going to come back with a Lapras. So Lapras will be met with a Psyshock, and they're going to be forced to throw energy here because Psywaves are double resisted. Single resisted on Steel and single resisted on Psychic. So here comes another Sparkling Aria. This will be enough to pick up the knockout on the Metang, but now I can come in with my Mandibuzz, and what's in the back but a Jumpluff. Now this could get a little bit tricky because Jumpluff has super effective Fairy Winds. It has neutral Acrobatics, which hits super hard. They're going to shield the first as well. And Gastrodon absolutely cannot see this Jumpluff. So I basically need to take this out with my Manabuzz, and my opponent knows that. So that's why they ended up shielding the first. They know they're going to need to shield an Aerial Ace from this Manabuzz. Here comes another Aerial Ace, but not before my opponent makes it to another Acrobatics. But I'm going to call the bait. Is it the Aerial Ace bait? It is the Aerial Ace bait, and suddenly we're in a much better position. But my opponent makes a really nice catch on the Lapras. However, this means that they're not going to get to that extra Sparkling Aria that they nearly had banked. So picking up the knockout there actually works out in my favor. And now I can just come in with the Manabuzz, get to another Aerial Ace. This will do some okay chip, but I need to pivot out of here because they're going to outpace me. So I'm going to throw one more. I'm going to pivot into my Gastrodon. Can I get to the Body Slam? Not quite. My opponent is forced to throw their energy, but I'm not sure this is Aerial Ace range. My opponent goes for the Aerial Ace. It's the non-Shadow Jumpluff, so we survive on 1 HP. The IVs on Gastrodon coming in clutch, making it to the Body Slam. That picks up the knockout on the Jumpluff, and we are able to take the win, and that was a 5-0 set with this team. Absolutely insanity on the climb to 2600 ELO. Great lead in the next match. We've got a Tinkaton on the lead. My opponent safe switches into a Furret. I throw 3 Mud Slaps, and then I pivot into my Manabuzz where most of their energy is wasted. They can't go for Trailblaze here. It's resisted damage. They have to go for Swifts, and Swifts obviously don't do that much damage. They are stab, but it's not a very good move. But the Furret has resisted Sucker Punches in this matchup, so not a great matchup for the Furret. We have the Dark Pulse come in here. It's only going to take one more Dark Pulse in order to pick up the knockout. I know I can survive another Swift, so I will just let this go. But it makes sense with the core of Tinkaton because Tinkaton is a hard punish to Manabuzz. So what I'm going to do instead is after I pick up the knockout with this Dark Pulse, I'm going to pivot into my Metang. That way it checks for the Pokemon in the back and they don't get too much energy on their Tinkaton. Here comes a neutral Psyshock onto the Jellicent that we lured out, and this is good to lure out because we have the Manabuzz with the dark coverage in the back and the dark typing to resist the hexes. They end up baiting with the Surf, which is pretty unfortunate because I do want to at least grab a shield for my opponent before I exit this matchup. And finally we grab a shield, which is nice. Now I can comfortably let this go. My opponent will have to go for a Shadow Ball in order to pick up the knockout here, and they do. So just depends on where we can go from here. I end up coming in with my Manabuzz. They pivot back into their Tinkaton, and we have the alignment that we need, which is fantastic. I was kind of worried about a Malamar in the back, which is why I saved my Manabuzz in the mid game, purely because this team often was run with Malamar in previous seasons. That said, back in comes the Jellicent. I'm going to Mud Slap this down into Body Slam range, and then I'm pretty sure I have an Aerial Ace banked on my Manabuzz. So I'm just going to grab that final shield from my opponent with a Body Slam. And now in comes the Manabuzz, going for the Aerial Ace. I accidentally over-tap, which allows my opponent to get to another charge move, but they're not at the back-to-back. And one more Mud Slap will be enough to pick up the knockout on the Jellicent, and we are still able to take that win. Into the next match, we've got, speak of the devil, Malamar on the lead. Bit of a relic in this current season, but I've got 2 better answers in the back. So I'm going to safe switch into my Metang, and this is where an energy lead is important because now I can get to the Gyro Ball before my opponent throws a Crunch. That does some sizable chip, and now they're in Fury Cutter range. I will have to probably double shield in this matchup, but that's fine because I need switch. I want my Manabuzz on that Malamar because that is an extremely dominant matchup. And then I have a feeling if my opponent is team building correctly, that whatever is in the back is also weak to Mud Slap because Yeah, and there it is. There's the Morpeko because they had a Drapion Say Switch almost to lure out Mud Slapper, and that allows me to get to back-to-back charge moves on the Metang. Fury Cutter is adding up as well. My opponent is forced to commit a shield on a resisted charge move. They will be able to pick up the knockout here, but this Morpeko is already in the yellow health range off of Fury Cutters alone, and now all I have to do is align my Gastrodon. I know I can live any one charge move here. Dark Orwheel, it is boosted. It'll do a lot of damage, but it won't be enough to pick up the knockout. But my opponent is actually on Seed Bomb, but at this point they are energy dry, so I'm still not worried about this. Yes, the opponent has an energy advantage on their Malamar, but all I have to do is overfarm significantly in this matchup, forcing my opponent to throw their energy and debuffing their defense, which is exactly what I need with the superpower, because now this Dark Pulse will do massive damage. It will nearly one-shot the Malamar from this range, not quite, puts it into the red, but at this point they are in Snarl farm down range. No point in throwing my energy because they have a shield still, unless I'm at the back-to-back, but I'm able to get the full farm down, so we are going to be able to take that win with that Morpeko on 1 HP and no energy. Into next match, bit of a neutral lead, Dugong. They unfortunately do have a pacing advantage in this matchup in the sense that they get to the Icy Wind before we get to the stab hard-hitting Earth Power, so I'm forced to kind of just let this go. However, Earth Power does have a chance to debuff my opponent's defense, so I am going to throw the energy right away, hoping I get that debuff right back, and if I do, I can just stay in this matchup, and that's exactly what I get, actually. I am then going to go for an Icy Wind catch onto my Metang, but my opponent had the exact same plan in mind. They ended up going for a Body Slam catch onto their Annihilate, and now that puts us in a pretty neutral matchup, Metang against Annihilate in the mid game. Now, of course, they have super effective charge move just like us, but unfortunately for me, their fast move is neutral, whereas ours is double resisted. So we have no fast move pressure, but we do have a pacing advantage, so we're actually able to grab a shield in that matchup, which is pretty fantastic, because now I can just come in with the Mandibuzz and get a full Snarl farm down. Of course, I will have to take one charge move here. It is the boosted, super effective Ice Punch, so I'll probably have to go for an Air Release here to pick up the knockout so that my opponent doesn't get to another charge move, but that's fine. This will be able to pick up the knockout, and then what is in the back, they're going to just show me the Dugong once again. That makes sense, but at this point, they will be nearly energy dry, so I'm going to pivot into my Dugong. I can overfarm quite a bit here, now go for the knockout with the Body Slam. Will my opponent let this go, and what is in the back if so? They do end up letting it go. It is a Primeape in the back, so I am full sending the Earth Power here. All I need to do is grab that final shield from my opponent, because I can get to an Aerial Ace on my Mandibuzz if I'm not there already. So they do get the full farm down, but that's fine, because now here comes an Aerial Ace. My opponent knew they had to get to the back-to-back either close combats or Ice Punches, so they did not throw their energy. That puts them at 1 HP, but that Snarl will go through, so no matter what this charge move is, even a Rage Fist bait does not matter. That Snarl goes through, it picks up the knockout, and we are able to take that win. Into the next match, we've got Gastrodon into Furret. So this is a bit of an awkward matchup because they have super effective Trail Blaze, or double super effective Trail Blaze. So what I'm going to do in this matchup is I'm going to throw 4 Mud Slaps and then pivot into my Metang, because at this point, the Fury Cutters plus the Mud Slaps will be able to put this in Psyshock range. So, and all of their charge moves are resisted. So even though their fast move is super effective, they're still going to have to throw energy, and I'm just going to match shields in this matchup. And if my opponent wants to double commit their shields, that's fine, because then I can just line my Mandibuzz on it and make all of that energy wasted, and then have an energy or a shield advantage. But my opponent ends up letting that go, coming in with a Jellicent and giving me Switch, which is super nice. We do want Switch in this matchup. I can come in with my Mandibuzz now. Just have to kind of watch for a Dark Pulse catch, because we still don't know what that third Pokemon is. It's probably going to be something that resists fighting. That's about all I can think of. And it's actually not. It's a Wigglytuff. It neutralizes fighting with its fairy typing, but it is super effective on normal, so that ends up being neutral. But they do, of course, have Charm for any fighters. That said, we do grab the final shield from my opponent. They do have enough for an Icy Wind here, so I will respect this damage. Even a Swift would be enough to pick up the knockout, and it is actually just the Swift, but now that is going to allow me to pick up the knockout with the Earth Power, and there it goes. And now all I have to do is Mud Slap this Jellicent into Dark Pulse range, also make it to a Body Slam, which is kind of nice. This will do some OK chip. They're now in the yellow, and they will be able to connect with a Surf here, but I don't even think I'm in 2 Surf range, so I'm definitely not worried about this matchup. And now here comes a super effective Dark Pulse. This probably is enough to pick up the knockout. No, not quite. They're going to live at 1 HP, but we saw how much damage that first surf did. We know we can survive this pretty comfortably. It does put us in the red, but we are able to take that win. Into the final match of the video, Gastrodon into Scizor. This is an okay matchup because Bullet Punch is resisted and these Mudslaps do absurd damage. They end up state switching into a Feraligatr, and I would argue I make a misplay here. So far, this is fine. I go for 4 Mudslaps and go for the Body Slam, but I then pivot into my Mana Buzz, and I honestly think what I should have done is stayed in that matchup with Gastrodon, because I could take it in the ones and then yeah, just take it in the ones and then align my Mana Buzz onto their Scizor, where all of their charge moves are resisted, so they can't really do anything in that matchup. I think that definitely would have been the better play. That said, I call a bait here of the second Ice Beam, which means I'm able to live it. I'm able to make it to another charge move. This is just the Aerial Ace, but it does grab a second shield from my opponent. My opponent is fighting super hard for switch, but I'm also able to get to a third charge move. They tried to commit to the full Shadow Claw farm down. That's going to pick up the knockout, and after that, my opponent just resigns the match because they no longer had a win con. But yeah, overall, this team surprised me. I mean, I'm going to be honest, I totally didn't think this team was going to work all that well. And then when I went on I think I literally went on a 10-0, I was like, excuse me? I mean, from a team building standpoint, it makes sense, right? You've got a Pokemon on the lead that is has only one weakness, and that's a double weakness to grass. And then you have Metang and Mandibuzz in the back, which deal with grass. They both resist grass, and they have super effective coverage for grass, right? We've got Fury Cutter and Aerial Ace, and then the Steel typing and the Flying typing. So from that standpoint, it makes sense. And then Metang as a safe swap, also really solid. And then also the core between Metang and Gastrodon, and then Metang and Mandibuzz are both pretty solid as well, because you've got a fire weakness on Metang, you've got a ground weakness on Metang, as well as a dark weakness and a ghost weakness. So the core between these three is actually pretty solid. You could also maybe potentially change the order of this team and put Mandibuzz on the lead. I'm not really sure how you'd want to do it, or maybe even Metang on the lead, but we wanted to highlight Metang as a safe swap in this game, or in these matchups, and yeah, I think it performed pretty well. I definitely do think it was a little overranked early on in the season, but I think where it stands now is pretty accurate, and no one's really playing it anymore, and I wanted to bust it back out, and it was a ton of fun. So yeah, that's gonna be it for me from this video. Thank you all so much for watching, and until next time, peace.